Senator Driscoll.
Excused.
Senator Carew.
Excused.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Senator Smith.
Here.
And Chairman Salzar.
Here. So the first bill that we're going to take up is House Bill 18. Anyone want to speak to House Bill 18?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. All right, we've got House Bill, may I ask a question? Did House Bill 235 get re-referred to you guys? Yes, okay. We're doing House Bill 18 today, correct? Yes. Okay, all right. So House Bill 18, and I'm phoning friends that know the financial stuff. Okay, no, that's fine, that's fine. So this is a bill that came out of the Joint Education Interim Committee on Career and Technical Education Funding, because what is happening is our small school districts, the way the funding is generated now, are not getting enough. The equipment is costing the same, no matter the size of the classes or the schools, but the smaller schools are getting less because of the way that the funds are generated. So this bill deals with that issue, and there's an appropriation in that, and I'm going to turn it over to my friends to explain that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Wanda Maloney, I'm with the Wyoming Department of Education. I just wanted to further say that the superintendent is also in support of House Bill 18. She sees a real need for career and technical education resources to go to our students. And as we look at this, what this bill actually does is it sets a threshold, a minimum for those CTE teachers, those that have 2 or less, to receive a certain amount of funding. And if you look at how funding is calculated for career and technical education, it's really, the model generates it in 2 ways. And the first way it does is it looks at the number of students in CTE classes, and it multiplies that times 1.29. That then generates an amount of money, and then for every 21 students, they would receive an additional teacher. The other way that it's generated is it looks at a threshold. So the model gives a certain amount, and in the bill you can see the amount is about $9,000. That amount is multiplied times the external cost adjustment. So the external cost adjustment then further supplies additional money and sets that threshold. If you look in the bill says $18,857 for that threshold of 2 teachers. But when we look at the external cost adjustment of what that would actually be equivalent to, would be $14,184 per teacher. And then the threshold of 2 teachers would be $28,369. So why that's important, like Senator Brennan said, is if you're buying a wood lathe for a classroom of students, whether you have 5 students or you have 50 students, you know that that wood lathe costs the same amount of money. And we realize that those smallest schools need to have access for additional supplies and materials. So this part of the bill really only addresses the supplies and materials.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jessie Defoe with the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education, and I just stand in front of you today in favor of this legislation. I really appreciate the interim committee's work on this. They looked at CTE as a whole, and you'll see more legislation coming, but they realize that these small school districts just don't have the leverage or the buying power that the larger school district does, and so this gives them a fighting chance. So we really appreciate that. And just speaking with Mr. Chairman, just right before we came in, the House actually put 18 into 235, so you are going to see this appropriation again in the next bill, which we assume will just be the next time that you guys probably meet. So just a heads up, if you have more questions about this, you're going to see the same appropriation in House Bill 235, and so I just don't want that to be confusing when it comes across your desk.
Yeah, and so if I heard you right and read the bill and did a little research, so for about a little less than 300,000 a year, we can make sure that our smaller rural school districts are taken care of as far as tech ed goes. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct? Is that really that simple?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, Senator Smith, I would argue that it is that simple in terms of helping them with this equipment that's necessary. Currently, 60% of our open jobs in Wyoming are CTE related, and so this helps our 9 through 12 get that workforce ready.
Senator Larson and then Senator Ryu.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. There was mention that there's another bill coming that contains the same amount of dollars, so are we doubling up, or what's up?
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Larson, correct. So what the education did, over in the House, they amended House Bill 18 into House Bill 235. We heard both of the bills on the same day in Education Committee, passed them out, but then with some things with amendments, then what we probably should have done was we probably should have laid this House Bill 18 back and just let 235 go, but that's not. So we can't, so if 235 passes, we don't need House Bill 18. Because we have, right, because 18 is in 235. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a suggestion is that maybe pass both out of committee, and then in terms of hearing them on the floor, maybe just hear 235 first, and if that goes through, then great, 18 never even has to come up, but if 235 does not pass, then either way, small school districts can win.
Chairman, could I just add one additional note? Thank you. House Bill 235 is a categorical grant for CTE and focuses on districts then reporting how they're utilizing the supplies and materials in their district. And that really is the basis of 235. But since this also dealt with supplies and materials, this is that increase for small schools. It was folded into it.
Well, that's a bunch of questions now. First, thank you. Thank you for being here. Just want to make sure I was straightening it. How many students is this going to affect? Based on current enrollment, current people in CTE classes in these rural districts, how many kids are we talking about affecting?
Mr. Chairman, to you, Senator, this would impact, according to our fiscal note, it would be 21 school districts, and I believe there's about 24 schools within that. We would have to do the numbers to see how many students specifically.
Okay. Follow?
Yes.
So going back now to this whole 235 versus this, those are both House bills. So would it be, well, I mean, besides talking to the majority floor leader about when they come up, I don't know where 235 is in the pipeline right now, if it's been read in or if it's coming our way or if it's made it to you in education. I assume it's coming our way? Okay. So.
Senator Grew, it was re-referred this morning on the floor.
Okay. So we'll be seeing it shortly. So it's, as the bringer of the bill and a member of the committee, would it be best for us to put an amendment on here and say that if 235 passes, the funding in it takes precedent over this, or should we just wait till we can do that as an amendment on the floor?
So what's the answer to that question?
I think that would be an appropriate way to,
Okay, we can do it on the floor. Okay.
to do that, to make sure that they don't both.
All right.
Any other,
She says no.
any other testimony? You good? Okay. Other testimony, anyone else like to give testimony for this? How you doing, sir?
Mr. Chairman, good morning, good afternoon. Rennie McKay, President of the Wyoming Business Alliance. Thanks a lot for having this discussion. So these two bills, House Bill 235 is much more comprehensive. And they're very important to the Business Alliance because our members, the biggest challenge right now is finding talent and finding the right workforce. We've got thousands of open jobs across the state right now. And career technical education, certifications, skills are highly in demand. And so I think that the backdrop that for you all to consider is that, again, both of these bills are talking about materials within the CTE program. And the challenge is that you could ask other folks if you want to dive into the history a little bit more, but set aside dollars for materials, but it was put into the block grant instead of being categorized to only be spent on that. For a district to be able to qualify for a grant, which is House Bill 17, which I think you may have just dealt with this morning, you need to be able to have spent your what was allocated for your materials. And that's not happening across the state. Most districts are not. I think only 7 currently are eligible for those grants. And so what we hear from the Business Alliance and other partners here is that CTE teachers need materials and supplies very badly. Sometimes it's lumber, sometimes it's a lathe. And we have situations where teachers are purchasing this out of their own pockets. We have situations where there are some districts that ask students to pay for materials. And that is in situations where that district is not spending the full amount and cannot qualify for the grant. So instead of spending those dollars and applying for grants, they're asking for students to pay. And then additionally, Business Alliance members are being asked to contribute and gladly do. That is certainly not an issue because they believe so much in this in the CTE programs, and we've got great teachers. Senator Grew asked about students. There's actually a restriction on the number of students that can participate in some classes because there's not enough equipment for them. So I think we could hear examples of a school where there's a bunch of demand from students to go into a program, but they can't do it because there's not enough welders, welding machines. So this is a very important topic to the Business Alliance in trying to help out getting those skills in place, because you could have a lot of high school graduates with CTE skills get hired today. And so just really appreciate that you're looking at both of these bills. Definitely 235 is much more comprehensive. House Bill 18 is a little simpler and a very nice little addition to the process, but you'll have the bigger discussion when you look at 235.
Any questions? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who else?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, yeah,
Yes.
I guess I want to make sure we get this right. When I hear 235 is much more comprehensive, I also worry then, is it going to be something that's going to be much more difficult to pass? So I don't know if I want to hang the appropriation on that. That concerns me a little bit.
So maybe
Maybe we just leave it and for now and wait and see how it flies. Yeah,
Senator Schuler, maybe you have some comments
Yeah.
about this.
there's somebody who knows.
Chairman and committee, I can probably muddy the waters a little bit more for you if you'd like. This bill is separate completely from 18 and 235, so hopefully you don't get those two confused. 235, as we said before, and I actually talked to the good chairman earlier today to give him a little more information on it. It's just simply a categorical separation of money from the block grant, and that's really the bottom line for that one. This one basically, as the good folks from the State Department and and Ms. Defoe and Senator Brennan talked about is strictly just, it's a separate grant application. It really doesn't, interfere with what 235 and 18 are doing. So I don't know if that muddies it for you or not, but happy to answer questions.
I have a question now, because I was under the impression that if 235 passed, that we don't need this. But that's not what you're saying, Senator Schuler.
Yeah,
You're saying something's totally different from that.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Smith, no, this is completely separate from 18 and 235. It's a grant process, and again, I think it's maybe only 5 or 6 schools, maybe 7 at most.
So that's 17 separate.
Yes, 17.
We're talking about 18 right now.
Oh, you're talking about 18? I thought we were talking about 17. Oh, you're talking about 18. Oh, good heavens. That's what happens when you come in late. I let a couple of lobbyists kidnap me before I got here. Okay, well, see, I told you I could muddy the waters. Okay, let's go back to 235 and 18. 18, certainly.
Mr. Chair, that was,
Go ahead and restate.
somebody was wrong, didn't know who it was, but we got it clarified. Okay, we're good, Mr. Chair.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and go through? Yeah, as I mentioned before, 18 is not needed if 235 can get passed. 235 is just taking that money from the block grant and separating it into a category separate. And so 18, excuse me? Yeah, it is. 18 basically was just another bill to kind of make sure that we took care of the small schools, but on the House side, they amended it to include that.
So you asking us to vote yes today?
I'm not sure what, obviously, since I came in late and I was on the wrong bill, I don't know if I should tell you anything, but honestly, the reason that both of them were sent over from the House is they wanted to make sure that either or one of the other would make it through. So they actually put 18 forward first and 235, and as we are in the Senate, we do things backwards, or maybe we do them forwards. I felt like 235 was the main bill we needed to get through, so I actually put it up first, and we got that one through. So we don't really need 18 unless there's any kind of danger that when we get it up there, that it gets amended and,
Mr. Chair,
so I don't know what kind of advice to give you on that.
Mr. Chair, I would just move that we bring an amendment, and the amendment would be that if 235 passes, that the funding on 18 is removed. And that would solve the problem, wouldn't it? Okay, that was my motion.
So you're making a motion?
I make a motion.
Second? Right.
We already did, yeah, we do, you did.
So let's have discussion on it. Senator Drew, do you have any thoughts on that?
The amendment is that the funding for 18 goes away if House Bill 235 passes the Senate.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, passed. Back on the roll call.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just would like to say thank you for ladies that came up initially and for the Senator. This is so important. I just think that, for just a little bit of money, we can do so much good. So this is a good long-term investment. You think about rural Wyoming, when you think about tech ed, what's needed in this state. This is a great investment. This is where our money should be spent on things like this. I'm a fiscal hawk. I voted no on a lot of stuff, so I felt like I needed to make that clear. Thank you.
Roll call vote on House Bill 18. Do pass amended. Senator Driscoll? Senator Grew? Senator Larson? Senator Smith? And Chairman Salzar? Mr. Chairman, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Do pass amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think we'll tag team this bill. And as you know, committee, this is our annual omnibus water bill construction. It's obviously several pages long, 63 pages, I think, to be precise. And so usually we work off of the blue sheet. And so I'm just going to go over a few things. First of all, we all know that these accounts are funded through our severance tax under the cap of the 155 million. So it's under the cap, it's 12% that goes into Water 1, 2, and 3. And I know I wanted to make sure and talk to you about that for Senator Smith's edification, as he's new on the committee here. And so with that, there are a few other extraordinary circumstances in this bill this year. We appropriated some money from the LSRA, $20 million from the rainy day account there to the Goshen irrigation tunnels. And they have seen that cost skyrocketing. And then the other was the Laprelle Dam project. That is $60 million. $50 million of that is a reversion from the Alkali Creek project, and then 10 million from the LSRA. The reason the Select Water Committee did that was because we're receiving less interest in the account that money's housed in right now. And the LSRA sees 5 to 6%, that is like at 1.2%. So we left money there for that irrigation district to be able to proceed forward with the project. There is an issue with easements, Mr. Chairman, there. They're around 90% of their easements are secured. However, there's some very affected landowners that were threatened with eminent domain by the irrigation district. And so because of that, they called me, and we called their local representatives. We had a landowner meeting, and Senator Grew was there. I'm not sure if Senator Larson was there too. And so that's the reason for we left them enough money to go forward with the project, continue working on those easements, and then come back to us, and we'll go ahead and look at reappropriating that money for them, because the cost of that project is going up. They'll probably have to come back for more money anyway. So since Laprelle is more of an immediate concern, and with our rainy day account, I think you send out a long-term fiscal profile today, and it shows that we're at $1.15 billion when we came in at 1.8. So that is the reason we're looking at utilizing this $50 million in the Alkali Creek funds for Laprelle, and then they can come back when they've secured their easements, and we'll relook at that project and reappropriate those funds at that time. So that is the reason for that change. And the language does show a 1-to-1 decrease. Back there, it's standard budget language on page 59, I believe it is. So it is not the 50 million plus the 60 million, it's 50 million from the Alkali Creek project that would then offset as a 1-to-1 match. So it's 10 million from LSRA and 50 million of that reversion. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that is my part of the presentation, and I would turn the rest over to the good director with your permission.
Yes, Director. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Mead, Director of the Water Development Office. Again, I think you guys are all looking at this sheet. Senator Steinmetz did a good job of pointing out some of the unique things. I'll just run through this quickly. So the first section of the spreadsheet there in front of you, we've got, and this is out of our account 1 new development. We've got 3 projects, municipal projects, and we also have funding for our small water account number 1. And that equates to $4,386,200. The next, still in section 1, but out of our account 2 rehabilitation projects, we've got 12 projects total there, plus also funding for 2025 small water projects. And that equates to the $17,094,331. And then section 2 of the bill is amendments to existing projects. And knowing you guys are just focused on appropriations, there are 4 amendments to projects that include funds. And then Senator Steinmetz already mentioned the reversion from Alkali Creek and the LISRA funding for GID and Laprelle. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions? Questions, anyone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, good afternoon. We talked this morning, and as a member of Select Water, you know that we've been talking a lot about projects that move forward and get to a point, and then because of not having easements or not getting permits or not getting this, they just kind of get kicked down the road. And they add 10% for an inflation factor. Sometimes they get kicked on for many years, doubling or raising the price of the project. I asked for a list from you today on some of those, and it seems like it's getting shorter. It looks like we're catching up on that. Could you kind of talk a little bit to the committee about that? Because I know we're all interested, all of us are interested in making sure we spend money wisely. But what steps that you all have taken to try to tighten up on that a little bit and the success that you're having with it? Could you just talk about it a little bit?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, you are correct. In past years, we have had issues with sponsors acquiring easements. That's been a major issue in years past. COVID also kind of increased the problems with just delays in projects with, getting things done and all that stuff. But I guess what we've been doing the last couple of years to try to address that is when sponsors come to us, we have a good understanding of how complex is this project. A lot of times municipal projects are a little more complex than agricultural projects just because the number of landowners we're dealing with and things like that. So we make an assessment, we talk to the sponsors, we understand, the complexities, and then if we don't think that they're going to be able to get that project done in the next year or year and a half, then we only provide pre-construction dollars, which would be funding for design, bidding documents, getting their permits in place and their easements, and then to come back to us after that point to actually get the dollars for construction, moving dirt and putting pipes in the ground. That doesn't necessarily save the program money, but it prevents the funds from being tied up into a particular project when there might be another project here that's a good project that could move forward. But because we put those funds towards this project that's going to get delayed, then they're just sitting there and not being used when we could get these other projects done quicker and probably at less of a budget or less funding. So I guess there would be a cost savings there. So we've taken a step back and we've kind of put that into two different phases, pre-construction and construction, so we don't have these continuous time extensions.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that was something for the committee as well, because I know when we take this to the floor, that comes up, and Jason and his team have really stepped up their efforts. And I know all of us on water have seen it, but I wanted to make sure that we pointed it out. That, as a matter of fact, right now, some of the projects that are been hanging out a little longer actually are all in the process of being let this year. And it seems, I have a few projects that are still on there, but to be honest, a little bit of a delicate subject because some of them are tribal. And so that adds a layer of complexity when you're dealing with that process that actually has been a little more vexing to solve. But I know you're working to solve it. So really, they've done a good job. And I just wanted to let you know I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the work you're doing.
Thanks.
Any other? Yes. You want to testify?
I'm basically here just to back up any technical questions the director would have, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did just want to take the opportunity while I'm here before this committee to talk to you about the budget for the Board of Control as we go into the budget for next year and looking to get the Board of Control off of the water development account money. As you know, the Board of Control is a constitutionally constructed board, and it should be on the general fund under the state engineer's budget. Unfortunately, in the past, we had colleagues down the hall that did not agree with that, even though it's come up as a budget request for the state engineer's office. So I would really greatly appreciate it, and I hope my two select water committee members would agree with me on this, that as you look at the budget, that you would consider putting the Board of Control back on the state engineer's budget and the general fund rather than these precious water development account monies where we can fund projects for our citizens across the state.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can you be specific on that? Is it like around 9 million, I thought, per year? Is that nearly correct?
That is correct. I think it's biennially around, what, 18? Yeah, so that really cuts into our funds when I believe we only get, what, 29 million a year. And they did backfill it last time. However, you know how backfills are, they can evaporate. And so I would greatly appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, if you would take that into consideration as you work on next year's budget.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Randy McKay again, really briefly, just obviously workforce is important, and so is water to businesses and the economy of the state. So really appreciate you all taking a close look at this, and we just, the Business Alliance supports this bill and what it can do for so many of the different industries of the state. So thank you.
Second? Okay, any discussions on this bill? Senator Larson?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think this is a great bill. It always is. It is so important to get these dollars out to not only our irrigation districts and farmers and conservation districts and especially the cities. I think they usually get around half of the amount. I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's, over the years, I'm thinking it is. I do have an amendment, and I could bring that anytime, so I guess that it is that time. Mr. Chairman, I bring an amendment here that essentially will bring back the funding back to Alkali Creek of $50 million. And specifically say that I'm not against LaPrel getting 60 million out of LSRA, and I think it's currently in that way, other than they're taking the 50 million out of Alkali and kind of doing a little bit of shell game to make it look like we're only taking 10 out of the LSRA. But I think we should fund both projects, and that's what my amendment does. And it also, I believe it takes it to 2029. If it doesn't, I will fix that. Currently, I think they're for one more year, 2026, I think, which is we got to fix that too. So anyway, that's the amendment.
So question, it was 29, then I think, did it move to 2026 in the House and then came back? Now, you want to move it back to 29? Maybe we just want to make sure we get some color here.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. It was 2026 coming into the session. It was changed to 2029 in the House, and then when it got to Senate Ag earlier this week, it got changed back to 2026 on the reversion date. So it's currently, as it sits engrossed right now from Senate Ag, it's July 1st, 2026 for the reversion date of the of the money for Alkali Creek Reservoir.
Mr. Chairman, and as you know, that won't be adopted till it's on the floor because it came to you for re-referral, so it would actually be the 2029 is how it currently sits until the Senate takes action and adopts that amendment. Because it hasn't gone to the floor, it came to you, it was re-referred, it will go back to the floor, and if the floor adopts that amendment, then it'll go back to 2026, but right now it's 2029. Does that make sense?
No.
No?
Mr. Chairman.
So
I
when
agree.
Senate Ag passed the amendment, that's just an adopted amendment by that committee. Just like today, when whatever amendment you make is an amendment that the floor has to approve. So it's an amendment from the Senate Ag Committee, but the floor hasn't adopted it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, sorry, I forgot that you guys looked at this. I knew it came over from the House in 2026.
That's correct.
Didn't know about your standing committee amendment. That's where I was confused. So,
Yes, okay,
thank you.
that's all right. I'm glad to clear it up. I've
so
been
we have-
following this bill.
We have an amendment.
And I've got copies. Does anyone need a copy of the amendment? Is that okay, Mr. Chairman? If I pass it?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I think we got a second. I'll second that if
Okay,
we.
so we have a second.
Yeah, and I have a question for the bringer of the amendment.
Yes.
Senator Larson, Mr. Chair, Senator Larson, my question is, so LaPrel is obviously, we need to fund it, in your amendment, and anyway, if I could, basically takes it, LaPrel from the LISRA, correct? And then, and it doesn't attack the funds that we've already set aside that are needed for the Alkaline Creek, okay? Is that correct? Right, hearing you correctly, is that what we're, I mean,
Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, you are correct. Yes. We keep the funds there, in there for LaPrel of 60 million. And they already had 30 million, so they're, and then they have the Fed dollars, so they're well-funded.
Gotcha. Yeah, sometimes these amendments are really hard to actually understand because of the way that they fit into the bills, but thank you very much, Senator
Other
Larson.
questions? Any other questions before? Okay, yes, Senator Green.
Just a question, a comment. You've got these three projects, and they're all, I mean, they're all big dollar projects. They're very, very needed projects. And the question now is how do we try to parse that out? We don't want to pick winners and losers. On the same token, when you're talking about easements, when you're talking about acquiring land to do these projects, folks watch what we do. They watch very carefully, and they see us take money away from one and put it into another, and then sometimes gives an impression that maybe we're walking away from a project. So if we're trying to negotiate an easement over here, well, then some may think, well, they're not even really serious about this. So I think that's the thread that the good senator's trying to weave here, to try to keep everybody in play, but still, make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck. Do I have that right?
Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, yes, you do, Senator Grew. I think this sends a very bad signal to the area of Alkali Creek Reservoir, those that have been working on it for a long, long time. And I do know that the easements are very difficult to obtain, but the more signals we send to them that, well, if you just sit on it for another year, you might be able to kill it. And we don't want to kill a reservoir project that's been in the works for so long. It's ready. It's got the federal government taken care of, as far as I know, on whatever you call them, the requirements. Yeah. So I think we need to make sure we send the signal that we are serious. This reservoir needs to be built. This is not in my district. I would, if chairmen would say it's all right, I think Senator Cooper would maybe want to speak a little bit about it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. When we take from one, when we give to one, we got to take from another. And both of these projects have immense importance to the state and to the people in their communities. Alkali will serve about, it's my understanding, a little over 14,000 acres. It's a big project. It's great for everybody from there all the way downstream clear to the state line. Every drop of water that goes down that creek is gone. It's great for Montana, it's great for South Dakota, it's great for Nebraska, but it doesn't help Wyoming. So every drop we can keep in Wyoming, we have to keep here, in my opinion. I've made a personal commitment, and I believe Senator Larson has too, we will set these guys down in one room and get this worked out. We're really close. The worst thing we could do for this whole project right now is pull the rug out from under it. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry for what I just did, but thank you for letting me speak.
Mr. Chairman, roll call vote on House Bill 117 amended. Senator Driscoll excused. Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Larson.
Aye.
Senator Smith. And Chairman Salzar. Mr. Chairman, 4 ayes do pass amended.